Inequality behaviors. We give you a couple of numbers and we ask you, people over here, kind of people, we ask you, how do I get from the first set of numbers to the second set? So we start with 2 and 5. We go to 4 and 10. How do I get from 2 and 5 to 4 and 10? We multiplied by 2. And then we use that inequality. And then we decided, how do I get from 4 and 10 to -1 and 5? And we said, what again? Subtract 5. So the operation is what goes in the middle. And when we subtracted 5, we get -1 and 5. And what's the inequality symbol again? Less than, which looks like a sideways L. How do I get from -1 and 5 to 5 and -25? Multiply by, you said -5? Yes. And when you multiply by -5, what happens in the inequality on to the right? Greater than. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Okay, and then using 5 and -25, how do I get to 15 and -15? Add 10. I know, I'm insulting your intelligence, right? Add 10. You're like, do that more. And what's the inequality symbol? Greater than. And to get to the next one, 3 and -3. I heard a couple different things. Why isn't it, let's see, subtract 12? Can I subtract 12? That works for the first number. It has to work for both, right? It has to work for both. Yes, so we divided by 5. And we end up with 3 and -3. And what inequality symbol? Greater than. And the last one in this column, how do we get from 3 to -3 and -3 to 3? Or you could have multiplied by -1. What else could you have done? I think. Let me think about this. Yeah, what else could I have done? Nobody else thought of this other method? What else could I have done to the last row besides multiply by -1? No, because -3 minus 6 would not give me the +3. Come on, guys. If nobody... Ian. Yes, thank you. Give that man a punny sticker.
What he say? I just said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not hear it. Divide by -1, because multiplying by -1 and dividing by -1 should give you the same answer. And what is the inequality symbol there? Less than. So it seems at different times it just kind of changes, right? So the questions are, what operations appear to be flipping the sign? And yes, you probably already know this. What operations? Subtracting? Does subtracting change the inequality sign? Multiplication and by what? A negative. So somewhere in that writing, you should be putting, this is for the first, is it number 1? Oh, it's not numbered. But for the first question, multiplying and dividing by a negative. Seems to flip the sign. Multiplying, I'll say or, and or, dividing by a negative seem to flip the inequality sign. Okay? Any questions on that? What is true about the negative number system? This was kind of vague. What is true about the negative number system? I mean, when we have positive 8 and 6, like the larger the digit, the larger the number, right? But what if I have negative 8 and negative 6?
The lower the number.
Right, the smaller it is. So this would be number 2. Maybe you write something about this. The larger, and I was trying to figure out how to actually say this. The larger the digit, and I say digit, I'm putting it kind of in quotes. The larger the digit of a negative number, comma, the smaller or the less value it is. The smaller it actually is. Do you understand what I'm saying? The smaller it actually is. So again, if we're talking about a positive 8 and a positive 6, obviously 8 is larger. But if we talk about the digit 8 and we say negative 8 and negative 6, negative 8 is actually smaller. Jamar, put that away.
I just want to go over everything. That's all.
Uh-huh. Okay, so the next one is kind of interesting. Does adding and subtracting, listen, does adding and subtracting a negative number always, sometimes, or never give you an opposite number?
Sometimes.
Okay, so I got to vote for sometimes.
Say it again?
Does adding and subtracting a negative number always, sometimes, or never produce an opposite number?
Sometimes.
So I got to vote for sometimes. Any other votes? Sometimes? Can you give me some examples?
I can't, but I'm blanking right now.
Negative 5 plus 10
It's going to give you positive 5.
gives me the positive 5. So that's a definite. That could be an always, but it's at least sometimes, right? Can you give me an example where it wouldn't?
Negative 8 plus 6.
Negative 8 plus 6 is going to give you negative 2. So that puts it in the sometimes category. Does everybody agree with that? Just say yes, it's quicker. Yes, yes, okay. All right, does multiplying or dividing by a negative number always, sometimes, or never produce an opposite number? Always? Does multiplying or dividing by a negative number always, sometimes, or never produce an opposite number? Maybe, what do you think they mean by when they say opposite number?
Wait, opposite number like negative?
Like that.
Like. What do you see on? So it's sometimes?
I think it all depends on your interpretation of opposite number.
Think of it as opposite numbers, but like
The opposite sign.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's written poorly, if that's what they're intending, right? I put sometimes.
Negative, always a negative.
Negative times negative is always a positive.
Negative and positive is always a negative. Right?
Yeah, so I still think it's sometimes, right? Does multiplying or dividing by a negative number always, sometimes, or never produce an opposite number?
No, I think so.
Sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Divine.
Okay, what's the answer here on the last question? Should be sometimes, because what does it really bank on? What does it really depend on? Which number? If I have a positive number and I divide it by a negative number, what's the result going to be?
Negative.
Negative. If I have a negative number and I divide it by a negative number, what's my result going to be? A positive number. So what does it actually depend on? Does it depend on the negative that you're dividing by? No, it depends on your first value, your first number. So it is sometimes, and it depends on whatever your first value is. Depends on your first value. Any questions about that? All right. And I am recording this in case you were not totally getting it. All right, let's go to the next page. The next page over. We're going to go on a fishing trip, guys.